When you have your girls, you're never alone. You get together for coffee, maybe to work out, or just to laugh. We created Hey Girl, just for you. Can't wait for you to join us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hey Girl. I'm your girl, Kim with an E, and this is episode 74. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, I want to let you know that Hey Girl is a safe space where you can share your experiences and be affirmed. Let's face it, life can be complex and sometimes overwhelming. That's why we believe in the power of conversation, because knowing we're not alone is what helps us get through. And I'm so glad you're here with us today. We have a great show in store for you. Say hello if you are here. Put your hello in the comments and let us know where you're joining from. So, this month, of course, we are focusing on women in STEM. It's been an amazing month already, and I can't believe we're halfway through September already. Time really flies. And I must say, the ladies that we have had this month have just been fantastic. I don't know about you, but it's just so inspiring to see girl power and to see these young women who are doing just such amazing things. And last week, we had a very young woman on with us, Miss Mercy, who actually started her podcast this week. I don't know if anyone checked it out. So proud of that young lady getting her PhD in physics. Wow. And then the week before, we had Ashley LeBlanc, my dear friend, such the life of the party. Always a lot of fun, but such a serious person. And when it comes to work, she is a chemist and just fantastic. If you didn't see the show, be sure to go back and look at the recording. And we have some more powerhouses coming up next week, and we have one with us today that you're going to meet in a little while. But listen, let me know you're here. Say hello. And I must say that the women that I have interviewed thus far, I admire so much for the things that they've accomplished, that they've been able to do. And I'm curious to know, what women do you admire? Do you have women in your life that you are just in awe of because of what they've accomplished, or maybe what they've overcome, what they've come through, and they're still standing? Put their name in the comments. Maybe tell me a little bit about them and what it is that you admire. There's so many wonderful stories out there, and it's one of the things that I love about this job is that I get to hear people's stories and we get to share our lives a little bit. Hey, I want to remind you to share today's live with your friends. Share, like, and follow the Hey Girl page, because we're always doing something new. I'm already preparing for next month's show. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But it's going to be such a treat. We have a whole other set of fantastic women to introduce you to in October. But what I want to talk about right now is some of the ladies that we have had on the show over the last year. So many of you know that we have been doing Hey Girl since April of 2020. And here we are almost at the end of 2021. I can't believe it, but it has been so much fun. And I want to remind you of some of the fantastic women that we have met in the past who are now doing some really amazing things. We had Bryn Herrera on last year in November. You may remember her. She's a chef and she's an amazing cook. And she's been doing some things so that she now, just on September 11th, premiered her own show on Clio TV. It's called Culture Kitchen. And so I just hope these ladies remember the little people now that they're going off and doing big things. But yeah, so check out Bryn Herrera's show. It's amazing, and she's so full of life and fun to watch. I know it's going to be a great show. And then we had in March a friend that I just recently met, and her name is Cynthia Jacko Wise. You may remember in March we were focusing on women in ministry, and she's also getting or has gotten her master's in counseling, and she is now working on her certification. And she works with children and adolescents, adults and individuals. She does marital counseling, family and group therapy, and she is currently pursuing licensure. She's able to do virtual and in-person sessions. So we absolutely want to support our girl, Cynthia Jacko Wise. Her information is there. You can reach out to her and uh, hook up for an appointment for yourself or your loved ones. We've talked a lot on this show about counseling and therapy and how important it is to take care of our mental health. So we definitely want to do that, and we definitely want to reach out and support our friends who have been so supportive of us. And then, oh my goodness, we just this summer talked to Franca Sadler, and she was telling us about those beautiful wedding gowns that she designed herself. And it was just, she opened our minds to what's even possible. She was telling us all the work that she does and how it works, and it's amazing. And this past week or the week before, I think she did Fashion Week in New York. Hello, she's on the runway with her models in those beautiful gowns. I mean, can we just give it up for these ladies who are seriously, seriously doing big things? I am so proud. And like I said, I just hope they remember the little people now that they're doing these big things. We knew them first. We knew them when. So, yes. Oh, Lisa, I hear you. I see you there. Hey, Lisa. She says, we were talking about women we admire. She says she admires women who have overcome abusive relationships. Absolutely. Hey, Yolanda, I see you out there. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Ton, I see you too. So yeah, I'm just all warm inside from all of the good news that we have gotten about the ladies who've been on the show. And then of course, super excited about the women that we are meeting still. And so, as I said, this month, it's all about girl power. And we are, as I say, busting loose, breaking those glass ceilings and those barriers that have been erected to keep us out. And I think that's what I'm so excited about, is that these women that are doing all these amazing things are just proving just how what's possible, what is possible that they have done, but also that means that it's possible for us to do it too, right? Whatever it is, it's possible. And I think that's what's really important for us to take from each one of their stories. So I'm thrilled to introduce you today to a woman that absolutely cannot be contained. Dr. Zaria Murrell was born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens, New York. She attended Howard University in Washington, D.C., and University of Maryland Medical School in Baltimore, Maryland. In 1994, she graduated from medical school, having completed a demanding surgical residency, which included 2 years of basic science research and a fellowship in laparoscopic and robotic surgery. In 2002, she moved to Huntsville and joined an established senior surgeon in a busy private practice. The majority of her patients were obese, and she specialized, among other things, in weight loss surgical procedures. In 2009, she returned to academia, obtaining fellowships in fetal surgery and pediatric vascular malformations at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. In 2011, she started the Pediatric Surgery Fellowship at the University of Louisville, which she completed in 2013, then stayed as faculty at the U of L School of Medicine into June 2018. As if surgery wasn't enough, Dr. Murrell also took several classes towards a master's degree in urban planning at U of L to learn about community development and public policy. In July of 2018, she returned to Huntsville and now works for Tennessee Valley Pediatric Surgery. After 27 years as a surgeon, she has done thousands of surgeries, changing one life at a time, and has provided healthcare for both the urban and rural poor. She also publicizes the benefits of exercise for body and soul, regularly works out to relieve the stress of juggling family life and the business of a private practice. Wow. Please join me as we welcome another amazing woman, Dr. Zaria Murrell. I'm out of breath. There was just so much stuff to read.
It's a lot. Sometimes I look at it and I think, what was I thinking? I just keep doing stuff.
I noticed. Yes, ma'am. You have been very busy, but I'm quite impressed, and I think you're just an inspiration. So I want to know, let's just start from the beginning. So were you the little girl who was like, oh, I want to be a doctor when I grow up? Or did you discover that later in life?
No, I was the little girl who wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. I was the little girl who would catch lizards with grass lassos in the Caribbean. Every summer we would go visit our family in the Caribbean. And so I would catch the lizards, and then once I choked them to death, I know, I'm sorry, and I would kind of cut them open and look at their insides. Yeah, I was that little girl.
Doing surgery on the lizards at an early
Yes, I
age.
was.
Mercy. And what Caribbean island are you from?
So I'm from Brooklyn. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but my parents are from St. Martin. My dad is
Okay.
from St. Martin, and my mother's from a really tiny island called Montserrat. And so
Ah,
we would spend our childhood summers in both places.
okay, lovely. I've heard of Montserrat. My husband's family, they are from tiny islands called St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yep.
So
You can
yeah.
see it from where my mom grew up. On a clear day, you could see St. Kitts.
Yes, and I think that's right. I think I remember them saying the same about Montserrat, that you
Yeah.
could see it on a clear day. Yeah, yeah. Wow,
Totally
that is
amazing.
so
Wow.
cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we have some other things that have overlapped also. Of course, I wasn't anywhere near the medical school, but I also went to the University of Louisville.
Cool.
So we have that in common. Yeah.
Like, I loved
Um,
my time in Louisville. It was amazing.
yes, I did too. I definitely enjoyed it there. So what was it about surgery you think that captured you? Like, why surgery?
Sure. So actually, when I went to medical school, I thought it was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. That was my original plan. Um, because I fell in love with sports medicine, and I used to be a gymnast in high school. I fell in love with just exercise and all that other stuff. Anyway, so when I went to medical school and I saw a broken bone being set, I was totally grossed out. And
Hmm.
I was like, that's not happening. And
Hmm.
when I did my rotation on surgery, I was totally fascinated by the intestines and everything that I saw and seeing them move. And I did two rotations. One was on transplant surgery as a third year medical student, and the other was on pediatric surgery. And that's
Uh-huh.
when I fell in love, was when I was on pediatric surgery and I saw the little children with such a wide variety of medical abnormalities. And so that captured my heart and held it all these years.
Wow. And I feel like pediatric surgery would be heartbreaking to see the little babies that need surgery or,
Yeah,
oh man.
me, it's almost like I get a child that is broken and I'm fixing them and giving them back to their parents. And it's a great opportunity to interact with the families. So you become
Mhm.
a part of the family, honestly. So I love it. I love it. It's not heartbreaking to me.
Oh, well, good. I mean, somebody has to do it.
Yeah,
So,
somebody does. Now, kids with cancer, that's heartbreaking. But kids where
yeah.
their intestines are outside of their body or they have hernias, those are
Mhm.
all to me things that are relatively fixable.
Hmm. Hmm. So obviously you had to do a lot of schooling, and I'm curious to know, and maybe, well, I'll ask the question first, but I imagine with all the schooling and then the work that follows, there must have been challenges. So can you talk about some of the challenges that you bumped up against that you had to overcome?
Sure. So I think from my perspective, I just love surgery so much. It was just whatever was necessary to become a surgeon. And so from that standpoint, some people look at college and medical school as an extremely long time. However, for me, it was just like water under the bridge because it was necessary to get to that point. And I actually just really love learning, hence crazy person who was working as a surgeon and taking urban planning classes.
Yeah,
Um,
we're gonna get to that.
yeah,
Don't worry,
that's
we're
another
coming
story.
to that.
Absolutely. However, so when you graduate from medical school and you go through surgical residency, you're actually doing surgeries. And even though you're not the lead surgeon, you play a role. And as you advance through the training program, through residency, your role becomes more incorporated and more extensive to the point that once you become a senior or what we call a chief resident, you're basically doing the surgery yourself with the supervision of the senior surgeon or attending surgeon. And
Mhm.
so, to me, just as long as I'm in the operating room learning, it didn't matter what role I played. I just love learning and seeing different people do different things. So I trained in Brooklyn at SUNY Downstate, and it was a large facility, 8 different hospitals that we rotated through. And you get to interact with all these different surgeons, and they all do it a little different. The outcomes are typically the same, but there's subtle technique differences that it's just like looking at a bunch of different dancers. Some people dance better than others, and it's just because they move in a different way. So to me, surgery is a dance.
So I'm assuming that there are very few surgeons that look like you, whether because of your gender or your race. So did you ever find that there were difficulties, or were you underestimated maybe at times because there was maybe assumptions made that you weren't, as capable as others?
So I felt that way in medical school. It was made clear to me that I was being slightly discouraged from pursuing a career in surgery. However, I persisted. But once I got into surgery residency, where I trained at actually was a very diverse community at SUNY Downstate, State University of New York Health Science Center at Brooklyn, which is why I ranked it high, relatively high. And I had an opportunity to go visit that place when I was still a medical student. It's what we call a sub-internship, and you basically go there for 4 weeks, and you get to participate and be a part of the team, and you basically get to sample what it's like to work there. And I really did love it. It was diverse from the standpoint of ethnicities, and there were quite a few female surgeons that were at the institution, and so they became mentors throughout the years. And so honestly, when I was in Brooklyn, New York, I thrived. My incoming class, which is when you're an intern, of 9 surgery residents, 5 of us were female at the time, and 2 of us were Black at that particular time. And so it was pretty cool. And then I had upper senior residents who were also of different ethnicities, and we all just worked together. And so I really am so grateful for that opportunity to be in such a diverse, not only work environment, but the patient population was also quite diverse as well.
Yeah. So what you mentioned that there were some who thought that you didn't need to go in the route that you were going. What did that discouragement look like? What did they say?
So my intern year, I talked to one of the pediatric surgeons at the institution where I trained, and I said, "Hey, I'm interested in pediatric surgery." Big-eyed, just excited. And the immediate response I got was, "There are no Black female pediatric surgeons." This was in 1994, and I was stunned that my race had any component to deal with.
Right.
That. I knew there were female pediatric surgeons because one of my other mentors at SUNY Downstate, her name is Dr. Velchek, and I adore her even to this day. She'll call and check on me. But Dr. Velchek is Filipino, and she just would always say, "Hey, you could do whatever you want." So I never thought that would be a barrier.
Right.
And then this older white gentleman told me there's no Black female pediatric surgeons, and so I said to him, I said, "What does that have to do with anything?" He was like, "Oh, it's okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and see what we can do." And that
so he had to correct
alert already.
Yeah. So he probably said what he was thinking. He didn't mean to say it out loud.
Probably not. But truth be told, the first female Black pediatric surgeon didn't actually come about until about 10 years later. So around 2003 was when the first female Black pediatric surgeon passed her boards. And I think she had just finished her fellowship in 2002. So
it's fairly recent that we've even had people like you. So do you know the numbers? Like, where are you in that number? Like, how many are there?
So I finished in 2013. I do know, so out of, at least as of about a year or two ago, So out of about 1,000 pediatric surgeons in the United States and Canada, the numbers were about 37 were African American. And of the 37, there were 13 females. And I think for sure I know about 9 of them personally.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Very,
so we all
very
know each other. When we go to meetings, we talk and
yeah,
hang out.
yeah. Y'all have a little club, I guess.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and there's a book that you said you were featured in. What was,
Yes.
can you
So
talk
that
about
book was a book that is written by the first Zimbabwean transplant surgeon who trained in the United States, but she's from Zimbabwe, and she shares her personal story of how she kind of came to where she was, and she interviewed several different people. I think there's probably about 50 or 60 female surgeons she's interviewed in a variety of disciplines: general surgery, plastic surgery, transplant, OBGYN. So she, and not only on the mainland in the United States, but also in Africa. And so she has the unique connection in both places. And she just compiled their stories. And how I met her actually was at this meeting that is currently going on, called the Society of Black Academic Surgeons. And so I was at a meeting, I want to say it was 2018 in Birmingham, and just walked into the room and sat down and was listening to the meeting. And I must have gone out to use the bathroom. And she came outside after me. She's like, excuse me, my name is Praise. What's your name? And I told her who I was. And she's like, okay, I have to talk to you. And we just sat down and chatted, and she's like, can I make an appointment to, so we could do a formal interview? And that's how it is. So, yeah. And she's such an amazing lady herself.
So the premise of the book is just you all telling your stories, or is there a theme that runs through it? Is it just
us telling our individual stories and how we, kind of how we got to become what we are, and our family situations and those kind of things. So they're just little essays about each individual surgeon.
I think that's fantastic. Passion and purpose, Black female surgeons. So it's a way to capture the history, honestly. So there's documented. That's great. I'm always excited when people do that, because we'll have that forever. Your stories are going to be there forever. So what would you say is the hardest part about being a surgeon, about working in the field that you work in?
For me, it's not per se hard, because I really love my job. It's really a calling. I think that if you go into medicine for the money, you'll be miserable, because it's very taxing on your lifestyle. However, I think it's just learning how to balance life and work, because surgery does require very many long hours away from the home. And so you do have to figure out a way to adjust so that you can meet the needs of your spouse or your children. So a typical day, most surgeries usually start around 7:30 in the morning. When my kids were younger and when I was breastfeeding my youngest baby, I stopped having 7:30 surgeries. I just opted to never come in at 7:30, and I would do my first case at 9 a.m. just so I can spend that quality time at home with the kids or drop them off to daycare. And then as they became older, I adjusted my schedule again. So you just learn how to adapt to the circumstances.
This week, of course, this past week was 9/11, and I happened to see the post that you put up on Facebook. Oh my goodness. Can you share that memory?
Sure. So I was, every 9/11, I share some little tidbit of what happened that day, because of my husband was at the World Trade Center. My husband was a network engineer for Oppenheimer Funds, and he had been working there for a little over a year. And we were in transition from the standpoint of we had gotten married just about a year before. and I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a fellow at the time in laparoscopic surgery, and I had taken off some time to do a surgery board review course because if you've heard of surgeons being board certified, it's required exams that we have to take. So the first exam you take is your written exam, and then there's an oral exam that takes about an hour and a half or so. Anyway, so I was doing a review course for the written exam, and the course was 6 days, and the last day of the course was 9/11. And so usually the classes start at 7:30 in the morning, and they will give you breaks every hour and a half or so. So our first break, I think it was maybe around 9, and I got a call, and it's from my mother-in-law, and she was basically saying, have you talked to Michael? She didn't actually talk to me. She left a message because I had my phone on silent. And so I tried to call her back, but the call wouldn't go through. And I was like, what is going on? Anyway, to make a long story short, the next time we had a break, it was a little after 10, and everybody was crowded around the TV. So I'm 36 weeks pregnant. I walked to the TV to see what's going on. And I saw the Twin Towers falling. And I was like, oh, is that a new movie coming out? And my two friends, my two surgery colleagues were like, no, this is really happening. I was like, excuse me, what are you talking about? My husband works there.
Nice.
And I kind of lost it. I didn't scream or anything, but I was like, oh my God, what I do? I need to find him. I need to leave. All I know.
And what floor did he work on?
Huh?
What level was he when he worked?
Typically, he was on between 34 and 36. The 34th and the Twin Towers had 110, so he was definitely lower down.
Okay.
But I know my husband, and he was that person who would sit through fire alarms and just stay there and just wait till the fire drill was over, and then everybody would come back and he would be there. So
right.
He's still sitting in his office because my husband also shows up to work 30 minutes early for everything. And work starts at 9. So he's usually there by 8:30. He gets his bagel and something to drink and relaxes and kind of plans out his day and then starts working at 9. So here I am thinking that my husband's in the building. And of course I didn't know, at 10 a.m. that the timing of when the planes hit, nobody really knew kind of what was going on. And I was in Baltimore. And then at that time, I did hear live that something had hit the Pentagon. And that's kind of when I was like, okay, what's going on? If the Twin Towers are falling and somebody hit the Pentagon, we are truly under attack. And I'm 36 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was staying with one of my classmates from medical school. And so the post was, I know that, she and I are basically, that's a moment in time that will forever join us because of what we went through that particular day. But I don't think I ever formally, publicly told her thank you. And so it's 20 years later. I have a son who's about to be 20, and I just felt the need to publicly thank her. So I basically kind of recounted the day's events, saying how much that I want to tell her thank you when I didn't know what was going on, and how when I came back to the house, where I came back to her apartment, and I basically said to her, I said, I think my husband is in there somewhere, and I was crying, I was hysterical. And I'm usually a very composed person. So I part of me wants to blame being pregnant at the time, but a lot of it's just emotions. So I said that, when I wailed, when I didn't know what was going on. And then I finally made up my mind that I was going to go to New York. And she was like, girl, you can't drive to New York. You're 36 weeks pregnant. And in fact, my doctor had told me that I couldn't drive long distances alone. So my brother, who lived in DC, came up to New York to drive with me down. And then my husband was supposed to take a train the following day to come down to Baltimore and get me, and he would drive me back up. but I could do the short distances from my friend's apartment to the course. So anyway, I calmed down, then I started journaling, and she just sat there quietly, or at least I thought she sat there quietly. I came to find out just recently that she called one of our other friends to try to figure out what to do to try to talk me out of trying to drive to New York. And, I finally said, there's nothing stopping me. I have to find him. I'm driving to New York. And she's like, well, go on. I'm going to go with you. You're not going there by yourself. So we get in the car and we start driving on 95. Of course, all the highways were shut down. So all we did was get on the highway to have to get off at the next exit. And in the meantime, I'm dialing. I don't know who I was dialing. I just kept dialing numbers. I was dialing my mother. I was dialing my mother-in-law. I was dialing my sister-in-law. Just trying to, but of course, no calls were going through. And it was always this weird signal I would get. Anyway, finally, the phone rang, and I had no idea whose number I had dialed. But the person who answered was my mother. And I said, Mommy, Michael. And she said, Michael called and said, don't drive home. And then the phone went dead. And,
wow.
And at that moment, I was like, okay, she heard from my husband. So I pulled over and I wept. And my girl in the car, Gwen, just sat there and listened to me. And then we went back to the house. And it was just, I kept crying. It was a day of
bet. I mean, that's traumatic. Okay, so what happened now that we're 20 years later? Where was he when it hit, and how did he get out, and how was he able to call you?
So my husband said all the other days that I was gone, so I was out of town for 6 days. He went to work on time as usual. And on September 11th, he said he could not get out of bed. He says, I don't know what was wrong with me. So he actually got on, he was late by his standards, which means he was not at work at 8:30. At 8:45 was when his train, which was the last train that pulled into the World Trade Center that day, he got to the train station at 8:45 and was coming up the stairs. Now, by this time, the first tower had already been hit. And so there was all this smoke in the main mall coming out of the train station. And he came up the stairs and he was like, what's going on? And he had no idea. And nobody, New Yorkers will just keep walking, just get past it. So he was like, well, I'm already late and there's all this smoke. I may as well go out and get my breakfast. So he walked out of the building to get his bagel. And he saw all this paper and stuff strewn all over the place. And he was like, what is going on? So he looked up and he saw the first tower was burning.
Oh, my word.
And he was like, what's going on?
I'm going to work today.
Well, and then as he looked down was when the second plane hit his building. And he said all he did was run, because he says he's never felt a sound like that before. He says there was glass falling down around him. He says he has no idea how the glass didn't cut him. But he just ran.
He was literally standing outside of the building looking at it when it hit.
He was not looking up when the plane hit his building. He had just started to walk away to go get his breakfast.
And he heard it.
And then he felt it. And he says all the buildings around him, the glasses were blowing out. And he says all he could do was run. So he ran uptown. He knew something was very wrong. So there were a bunch of people running over the Brooklyn and the Manhattan Bridge. And he was like, well, what if they hit the bridges? So he's like, I'm not running over a bridge to go in the water. So he ran uptown, and he had a friend that he called. And he did a lot of walking that day.
Whew.
It was wild.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I think what was worse, honestly, for me was driving every day once we finally did go back to work, which was a few days later. So since my husband was a network engineer, all these satellite offices had to be set up since nobody can all come to the World Trade Center anymore. So he had a lot of work to do setting up all these remote stations at different people's homes and satellite offices. But we would drive back and forth to work, and it was the smell and the building still burning and seeing the light shining up in the sky every night. It was rough. It was rough. And last but not least, when I was scheduled to deliver, so I went into labor about 3 weeks later. I was scheduled to deliver in Brooklyn, and the best way to get there is through the Holland Tunnel from New Jersey. We lived in New Jersey, just on the other side of Manhattan, and the Holland Tunnel was closed. And so we pull up, and I'm in labor, and the guy's like, "You're not supposed to go through here." I said, "But I'm in labor. My contractions are less than 5 minutes apart." So we got a police escort,
Oh.
the vacant Holland Tunnel to Lower Manhattan, and he basically escorted us all the way over to the other side. And I don't know, I don't watch a lot of scary movies, but if you've ever seen the movie that Will Smith did, I Am Legend, where New York is like barren and deserted, that's what it looked like. I've never seen Manhattan without people walking through it and with debris and no people. It was, and the smell, that smell I will never forget.
Ah.
So yeah.
It was your son who was born.
It was my
What's
son.
his birthday? What was the date?
October 7th.
Okay. Wow. I have a nephew who was born the day before 9/11, and we all were like, "Oh, I'm so glad you had him on the 10th instead of the 11th."
Yeah.
Oh man, that is an incredible
Yes,
story.
it was amazing. And I'm just humbled. I know so many people lost their life, and so many brave people went to try to save people. And there's so many surgeons. I mean, I know people who lost siblings. And one of the people that I worked with, I was a robotic fellow. One of the people that I worked with was the person in charge of the robot that we would use. And she was scheduled to get married the Saturday after 9/11. And her husband used to work at Cantor Fitzgerald, which was the financial institution that was at the top that lost the most employees. And he had just changed jobs. And so he was not at work that day. But they canceled their wedding. But he lost a significant number of the groomsmen that were supposed to be in his wedding because they were friends from work. And she just came to work every day bawling. And I was like, "Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to get married?" And she said they did. They had a private ceremony with just she, her husband, and I think maybe her parents. But they postponed the big thing. But she says, "I have to come to work." She says, "Because I would just sit at home and cry all the time."
Oh man,
it was devastating.
Heavy. That's heavy. I'm telling you. Well, so thankful that your story had a happy ending.
Yes.
And
That is,
yeah, we all are, our hearts and prayers are certainly with all those who didn't have such happy endings. Certainly. So I want to shift gears a little bit. You shared a lot about your experience as a surgeon and preparing for the position that you're in. So can you help us understand a little bit where the master's in urban planning came in?
So it came from living in Louisville. Honestly, I have always, one of my husband and my favorite pastimes is to watch a lot of home and garden TV and watch all these home renovations. And living in Louisville has one of the highest number of Victorian homes. And I was just fascinated by the architecture. Also, from living in Louisville and going to church on what we call the West Side, which is typically the urban poor Black neighborhood, I realized that there was a true divide once you cross a certain line in Louisville. That line is 9th Street. And so once you cross 9th Street, then everything changes. But there were several blocks close to where my kids went to school. They went to our church's private school. And I would just drive around and I'm like, there are gorgeous homes over here. And how come nobody's doing anything about them? And so I was fascinated how the built environment affects a community. Now, I know that the homes were originally gorgeous, but they had fallen into decline. And I wanted to find out the history. So I started researching, and I found out about this Black architect who lived in Louisville, and I totally became enthralled with him. And so I asked my husband, I said, hey, would you mind if I started taking some classes? And he was like, how are you going to do all that? In fact, it became a great deal of stress on our marriage. Hence why I only did it for a year, because I was doing one class at a time. And I somehow juggled and kept it with work and class. And I'm that student who wants an A in every class. So yes, I would stay out sometimes late in the library doing homework instead of coming home to cook dinner. It was a little crazy, but after a while, I was like, okay, I can't do all of this. So
yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, I was wondering. So you were, at the time that you were doing this, what were you doing in your career? You were
I
working as a
was
surgeon?
functioning as an attending pediatric surgeon, running a fetal surgery program at University of Louisville, working full time, taking lunch breaks to go to class, it was insane. Yeah. But I was sucking this stuff up. Oh my gosh, I sucked it up. I loved it.
Oh my goodness, that is so. That just says a lot about you, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. Like, wow, and the fact that you would even attempt that is crazy. But wow, I mean, hats off to you in that regard. So how does that intersect with the work that you do then, or does it at all? And that, having done that, do you see any overlap in?
So currently, I'm not using it quite as much. For a brief period of time, I was on a community board in Louisville that was deliberately designed to help honor the African American architect. And they were trying to start a trade school to teach people how to restore the old homes on the west end of Louisville. And I did that for about 2.5, 3 years. I know I keep mentioning African American architect, but his name is Samuel Plato, if anybody wants to look him up. And he designed multiple homes. And actually, he's famous for building, he got a government contract to build United States post offices in the early 1900s. So it was pretty impressive that he was able to do that. Okay. And his story, briefly, some people would say that they didn't want to work alongside African American workers. And so many times he would not tell people that he was the one who designed this stuff, or sometimes at the grand opening, he wouldn't show up because he was African American. And at that time, in the 20s and 30s, it was crazy.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So clearly you have a lot of interest, and that is a very interesting story, very fascinating. You also have traveled. You've done missionary work and gone to several countries. You said you've been doing that for 12 years now, right?
Yes, since 2009.
Is that something you do yearly?
Almost always yearly. I went in 2009 for the first time, fell in love with it. Then that's when I realized. In 2009, I was having my whole life epiphany. I was about to turn 40. I realized that even though I was content with being a surgeon, I was discontent being an adult general surgeon, and I decided to fully pursue the pediatric surgery route. And I had told the founder of the organization, which is called KenyaRelief.org, that if I became a pediatric surgeon, I would come back and lead pediatric surgery teams. And he was like, absolutely. So 2 years later, when I started my fellowship at the University of Louisville in 2011, I called the founder, Steve James, and I said, Steve, hey, I just want to let you know that I got a ped surgery fellowship, so I'll be able to follow through on what I told you when I finish. He's like, why do you have to wait till you're finished? He says, let's go next year. I was like, wait. I just started fellowship. It's 2 years long. I'm not sure about all of this. He's like, I'll come up there and I'll introduce the people to the program. And next thing I knew, January of 2012, he came up. We had, we put out flyers, and in late August, September, I led a team to Kenya, and ever since then, I've been going. In fact, in 2016, I went twice. I loved it so much. So yeah, I went
So
12,
what do
13,
you
14, 15, twice in 16, 17, took off in 18 only because I moved to Huntsville, and then went again in 19.
so
So
what
yeah,
do you do when you go to these places? And you
I'm
go to multiple.
pediatric general surgeon. So
Okay.
I
You're
do
doing.
surgeries I do here in the United States. Well, within reason, because we're working mostly on an outpatient basis. I do a lot of hernias, circumcisions,
Mm,
keloids. Every now and then I'll get something unusual.
mm,
That I'm uniquely qualified to do. And so, but yes, usually on children, they tend to do circumcisions later on children there. And so, as opposed to doing a circumcision on a newborn, I'm doing circumcisions on 3 to 12-year-olds.
ooh,
Yeah. But they love it because for many of these young men, it's almost like a rite of passage to be circumcised as somewhere between the 10 and 12-year-old range. And the way that they used to do it was with very limited anesthesia. And so now I have anesthesiologists. I put the children to sleep. I give
okay.
them a regional block so that when they wake up, they don't feel any pain. And they're like, oh, yes. And it's so cute when you see a bunch of 4 and 5-year-olds. There's an orphanage there, and they're home because they've had a circumcision that I've done the day before. And I stopped by to check on them, and they're out there and they're comparing each other's penises. Sorry, but it's so cute. I'm sorry. It's okay.
That's
It's clean.
that's yeah, it's fine. That's hilarious though.
Air pressure.
Oh man. Wow. So when you do the trips there, you're how long do you usually stay? And do you go to a different place each time, a different country each time you go,
So,
or is it always the same places?
yeah, great question. So I typically go to Kenya. It's always the same place. Kenya Relief has a facility there that has been up and functioning, I believe, since 2002.
Mm,
And so my first time was going was in 2009. Um, They have an orphanage. And the reason why I love this organization is because I've watched it grow and I see where the money goes, and it's always going towards the kids. So they have an orphanage. I believe they take care of about 100 kids. Um,
mhm.
they have a school. I remember this the first time I went in 2012, the building was being built for the school. And then when I came back in 2013, it was being finished. Then when I came back in 2014, they had classes going. And then when I came back, I mean, like every year. And so it started out to be just a small school, but then the public wanted to be, well, the local community wanted to be in the school. So now I think they have 600 and plus students. Some of them are boarders from the community.
Mhm.
But all the orphans go to school there as well, and they have excellent pass rate on their exams. It's just so impressive. I remember one Christmas they had this little jingle, and the little kids were saying, "We need a bus, we need a bus," and literally in a space of a few weeks, we raised $50,000. And the next time I went on my trip, there was a new bus there. It's just like
Wow. And so when you go, you stay how long at a time?
yes, it's usually about 11 to 12 days.
Okay.
It's about, you lose about 2 days going because of the time difference. Kenya, depending on where you're coming from, is about 7 to 8 hours ahead of Eastern or Central Standard Time.
Mhm.
And then once you get there, they have different activities planned. But you basically work from Sunday to Wednesday. So Sunday you start seeing patients, then you operate Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I think one of the most exciting parts is that you get to go on safari. So we go on safari Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday we start heading back to Nairobi and fly back, and then you're home on Sunday.
Wow.
So
That's Sounds incredible.
It's life changing. It really is an
I'm
amazing experience.
sure.
And I've
Yeah.
had the opportunity to bring several physicians with me who have fallen in love with it as well. And one of my good friends who's an ENT surgeon now leads his own team. He came as part of one of my teams, and now he leads a whole separate team on his own. And
Right.
I'm just so blessed with friends who have believed in this vision. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That is great. Well, I have more questions and we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you two questions. I'm going to ask one first. When we were talking yesterday, because you've done some amazing things, you've certainly had impact and on a lot of people's lives, positive impact. I mean, it's just, I'm sure everyone's like in awe, right? But you said something yesterday, and I wanted to come back to it. You said I should tell them about my thorn.
Ah, my thorn. So
And
my
so
yeah,
yeah, I think it's only fitting because everyone's like, she's amazing, but like everyone has a thorn, right? So tell us
so,
about your thorn.
yeah, my thorn is I was diagnosed with alopecia when I was 25. I was faithful in the hairdresser's chair at least every 4 to 6 weeks. Um, and I used to be one of those girls who thought that your beauty was tied up in your hair. And so when at 25, I, felt a little sore spot in my head, and then the hair started to thin out. I went and saw three different dermatologists. They all gave me the same diagnosis, and I was advised that it was going to progress, and then as I got older, that my hair would fall out, and I was devastated. So I cut off all my permed hair. I went natural. I tried all. My mother used to make all kinds of concoctions. You have to know who my mom was. My mom has since passed, but she was very much into natural things, and she would boil different basil and rosemary and get
Mhm.
these essential oils and put them on myself. We were really trying to do everything to save my hair.
Mm.
And when I was pregnant, I had dreadlocks, and my hair grew amazing with both pregnancies. And after my second pregnancy, I told my husband, "Can we do one more?" He was like, "For what?" I said, "Well, my hair is growing great." He was like, "I'm not going to get pregnant just so you could grow some more hair." uh, I'm being, yeah, very funny right now. However, so yes, once I stopped breastfeeding my daughter, and she breastfed for quite a while. She'd probably be embarrassed if I told you how long she breastfed. Um,
Okay.
However, my hair did start to fall out, and this time it didn't grow back. It grew back after my first pregnancy, but the second pregnancy it didn't. And
Hmm.
so then I cut it really short. I had a little afro. I had to grow the front long to try to comb it back to cover up the areas that were getting bigger patches of bald. And then in 2007, my husband and I went to a medical meeting, and it happened to be in Hawaii. And he said to me, he says, "I think you could totally rock the bald look." And I was like, "Babe, I don't know." He says, "Well, your hair is really short now. You keeping it cut short to look like an afro." He says, "Let me shave it off." I was like, "I don't know." And I said, "Okay, but I trust you." So I let him shave off my hair, and I have not looked back. Now, that whole process of becoming comfortable in my skin, it probably still took me a few more years. And for a period of time, I was wearing wigs, but
Hmm.
um, but maybe around 2009, 10 was when I was like, I can't be bothered anymore. I got rid of wigs. I was running much more frequently, and I started wearing head wraps, and then even
Hmm.
that, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
I
feel,
mean,
I feel like that's what God has given me to keep me humble, and help me realize that true beauty has nothing to do with all of this. It's a heart thing.
yeah, yeah, great story. And it really segues perfectly into my next, which is about the whole fitness situation.
Yeah.
So talk about how you got into that very quickly. We have a couple minutes left. And then what your plans are for your future fitness goals. So
Yeah, sure. So I started running when my daughter was 3. And, I said before that I used to be a gymnast in high school. So I started running just to get back in shape and just to kind of release stress of trying to juggle everything. And then I started running races, and I'm a very competitive person.
Mhm.
So I signed up for my first, I think I did a 10K, I did a 5K, then I signed up for a half marathon. I loved it so much that I ran 4 half marathons in 1 year. And then since then, I have run 13 half marathons. So a half marathon is 13.1 miles. So I've run 13. My last race was in 2014, I believe. Yeah, 2014. That's for sure when I did my PR, my personal record, my best time, which was an hour and 57 minutes. My goal
Mhm.
was always to break the 2 hour mark. So I've done 2 half marathons where I both did 157. And then when I came back to Huntsville, I started to transition into more weightlifting. And over the last 3 years, I have fallen in love with weightlifting and rowing. And so now my goal is I have a coach, and he thinks that I can be a bikini competitor in spite of 2 C-sections. I was like, I have a mum tum. He says, we worked on all that. And I love rowing on the erg. And then one of my good friends, who's a nurse here in Huntsville, used to be a college rower. So she's actually taken me out on the water, and I've rowed in a real boat, and it was awesome. I've done it twice, and I got the bug. I want to do it more. It's just trying to get it in my lifetime schedule. So
Ebony says overachiever, but I would expect nothing else from an awesome surgeon. I
uh,
mean, literally everything you do to the 100th power. Like, oh, I had a little interest in urban planning, decided to get a master's. Oh, I had a little interest in weightlifting, and now I'm going to compete and become a bikini model. I mean, like,
I'm trying. I don't know if it's really going to happen. I just do know that this is not something that you work out for 6 weeks and you have an amazing body. It's taken me
yeah,
3 years to get to the point where I really realize that, oh, I might be able to do something with this. So it's still a process.
yeah.
I'm still learning, but I love learning, and I feel like I'm a big science experiment right now. I'm trying to figure out what works best with my body, how I eat, how I work out, timing, all that stuff matters.
Yeah, beautiful legs, by the way. I see the picture. And we're getting comments coming in. They're talking about how beautiful you are. And Amanda, if you can put those comments up again, I'm not able to see them on my side, but if you put them up by the screen, everybody in the comments is like, girl, go. You're beautiful. Tanya said your beauty and brilliance absolutely palpable. I agree. I agree. I think that's fantastic. Like literally, Emily said you rock it. I remember seeing you at HH Huntsville Hospital and thinking you were absolutely beautiful. Yes, beautiful. So yeah,
You.
I think that what I love most about your stories, Lisa says you're beautiful. You are beautiful inside and out, and I think what's most important about that is that you are an inspiration to other women and girls, and I think it's really important for them to see people like you, people who look like you, doing these kinds of things because it shows them that they can do it too. And so my last question to you actually is, what advice would you give to young girls or even grown women who might be less courageous than you when it comes to doing hard things?
Mm. So I have 2 quotes that I love that kind of are my um, what I go to, my mantras, I guess you can say. One is bloom where you're planted. So I'm not trying to be the best, and I'm not good at a lot of other things, but what I'm good at, I try to master. So I'm just trying to be good at what I know how to do. So bloom where you're planted. And the other one is do it afraid. It's okay to be scared, but keep trying. If you're even starting to do it, just keep doing it afraid, and then the fear is going to go away. So
Mm,
that's kind of what I live by. Do it afraid and bloom where you're planted.
I love that. I think that's the perfect place to leave it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for being here, for sharing your story and your encouragement. Ruth Butler says you motivate me. So I think that you're certainly having an impact. So Thank you. Keep doing what you do, and I'm going to keep following your progress, and I can't wait to see that competition when that time comes.
We'll see what the saints have to say, since I'm married to somebody
They'll be all right.
Clergy.
They'll be all right. They'll get over it.
And I appreciate you inviting me on the show and all that you do. And you're also an inspiration to me, because I know you work out too. I can tell. I've always paid attention. I was like, ooh, I be like her.
I'm trying to be like you. Well, thank you, though. That's right. That's what it's all about, for sure. So we are going to go to our scripture, which is actually Dr. Murrell's favorite go-to as well. It is from 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. And it says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." I think that's such a perfect verse to end out today's show, because all of us can be strong even in our weakness. And we can certainly hear that in Dr. Murrell's story and in her encouraging words to all of us. We can do the hard things. It is possible. Even if you're afraid, do it scared. And his grace will be sufficient for us and whatever it is that we have to handle. So thank you so much, Dr. Murrell, and thank you all of the ladies who have been on our show this month and even in the past year, because you demonstrate what is possible with God's help. I'm so excited to have you return next week for another great episode. We have 2 ladies who will be with us next week. My very own cousin, Dr. Lisa James, who is a mathematician, and also Danielle Lewis, who is an engineer. And we're going to hear how they are busting the glass ceiling in their unique way. I hope you will join us. Until next time, God bless.
Ladies, get ready, because we're busting loose, breaking free from those stereotypes that keep too many girls bound. You can't be an engineer, they say. Girls don't like math, and physics or chemistry, no way. Well, they're wrong. This month, we have a full roster of women in STEM who will show you how to break free from those tired old lines. Break free from the boredom. Join us next Saturday at 5 on Facebook Live.